Dragon Ball Daima is way better than Dragon Ball Super. Dragon Ball Daima is the real deal, a series that has reminded us why we fell in love with Dragon Ball in the first place. Unlike its predecessor, Dragon Ball Super, Daima manages to capture the magic, the heart, and the sheer intensity that made the franchise legendary. But why exactly is Dragon Ball Daima the superior series? Let's break it down. One of the biggest complaints about Dragon Ball Super was its inconsistent and at times lackluster storytelling. From power-ups that came out of nowhere to plots that felt rushed or downright forgettable. Super often felt like a patchwork of ideas rather than a cohesive story. A prime example being the entirety of the Goku Black arc, which overall felt like a fan fiction being canonized, with future chunks returning to suck even more, introducing a god-level villain with egotistical motivations, and evil Goku. Daima, on the other hand, offers a decently written narrative that actually takes its time to develop characters and conflicts. The stakes feel real, the world building is solid, and for once, Goku isn't an overpowered goofball. He's a warrior with a mission. For a 20-episode series, I felt more compassion from the characters in here than any of the 131 episodes that Super spat out. Daima was more focused with how it drives its narrative, while Super is just throwing stuff at a wall to see what sticks. One of the biggest letdowns in Dragon Ball Super was how transformations were handled. Super Saiyan God in Blue felt more like color swaps than meaningful evolutions of power. More so in Blue's case, since we never saw that form earned in a meaningful way, unlike transformations before it. The one positive I'll give Super in its transformations is Ultra Instinct's utilization. This form had been teased arcs prior to the Tournament of Power, and it was introduced in a dramatic and powerful way. The issue with the other transformations in Super was that they would get introduced in the arc that they were built in with no lead up. Meanwhile, Daima treats its transformations with respect. Super Saiyan 3 and 4 return in full glory, emphasizing their raw power and visual spectacle. Super Saiyan 3 isn't just a stepping stone, and Super Saiyan 4 finally gets the attention it deserves as a true evolution of Saiyan might. Unlike Super Saiyan Blue, which often felt spammed, these transformations in Daima actually mean something, especially in the case of Super Saiyan 3, since it actually managed to score a few W's in its use in the show. Vegeta now shown to be able to use it was a nice treat to see, especially for older fans of the series. Super Saiyan 4 is nice to see as well, with it now being canonized in the Dragon Ball story. I have some gripes with that form that I'll touch on a little bit later, but still, mostly positive to see in the first place. Dragon Ball Super had a nasty habit of sidelining older characters or reducing them to comic relief. Goku was often written as an irresponsible, battle-obsessed fool who couldn't grasp simple logic, and Vegeta, he was mostly playing second fiddle to Goku's success. In Daima, however, characters actually feel like themselves. Goku has his depth and personality restored, and Vegeta actually has a relevant role rather than being treated as an afterthought. Again, harping on the Super Saiyan 3 point for Vegeta, it shows growth with his character for a strength aspect, and his character even has some comedic value which I can appreciate, and if you finish Daima, then you know which scene I'm exactly referring to. As for Goku, I appreciate him not being a mindless fighter, unlike how he was in Super. His characterization is more shown through Daima, no doubt with Akira Toriyama being more hands-on with this project. Even other side characters get their moments, making the story feel more balanced and engaging. Majin Buu and Q were fun characters to witness, Goku's new friends were cool enough to tag along in the journey, and I didn't completely hate Goma as a villain. Not the best Dragon Ball villain, but serviceable to a series combining both elements of OG Dragon Ball and Z. Overall, for the characters that had a mainstay in the story, it was more welcoming to say the least. Visually, Daima is simply stunning. The art style is a beautiful blend of classic Dragon Ball aesthetics with modern animation techniques. Unlike the inconsistent animation qualities of Dragon Ball Super, which gave us some less than stellar moments. Looking at you, Episode 5, Daima maintains a level of polish that keeps fans excited. Every frame feels like it was crafted with care, and the animation actually enhances the action rather than holding it back. Dragon Ball Super had some highlights, especially near the end of the original show, but there were many lows in its earlier bouts, and in some of what is supposed to be the most hyped up moments in the show. Unfortunate for Super's case, but this gives credence as to why Daima can be better enjoyed. And I don't want to hear the argument that since Daima is almost 10 years older of a show and that's why Daima's animation was better, since even lots of anime before Dragon Ball Super had better animation. Even Dragon Ball Z had better animation. And while art style in of itself is subjective, if you can look at me with a straight face and say that those rigid and jagged lines you see every frame in Super looks better than the smooth lines and art direction of Daima, then you, sir or madam, need new eyeglass prescription. While you're at it, you should also prescribe yourself with a daily dose of the Curly Haired Hokge by subscribing to this channel. If we reach 500,000 subscribers by tomorrow, I'll do a 3-hour long video essay on why One Piece is well worth the watch once you get past episode 287. You won't regret it. As for the action, one of the best selling points of the Dragon Ball franchise, Daima's fight choreography is a huge step up from Super. Remember how Super often relied on excessive speed lines, static shots, and barely any impactful choreography, Daima takes a much more dynamic approach, allowing fights to feel fluid, well-paced, and visually gripping. There's weight behind every hit, making battles feel like true clashes of titans rather than light shows with no substance. It doesn't even need transformations to gaslight you into thinking it needs to keep your attention while watching the fights. A lot of the fights feel reminiscent of early Dragon Ball while still having that Super Saiyan flair to it. No doubt in my mind that Daima had the more interesting fight choreography in comparison to Super. All that being said, no series is without its flaws. Daima does suffer from slow pacing at times. Some parts take a little bit longer to unfold than they should, making the wait for big moments a bit frustrating. Like in episode 13, which felt like a filler episode to meet the 20 episode quota. Speaking of which, only 20 episodes for a series this jam-packed is kinda crazy. With the world building that they introduce in the series, they better make the point that it'll have relevance in future Dragon Ball material, whether it be through a second season of Daima or a continuation of Super. And then there's the issue of unresolved plot points. Remember the healing bugs that Goku lost? One of them was tied to fusion, and yet we never got a satisfying conclusion to that. It left a bad taste in fans' mouths because it felt like something important was completely forgotten. They might as well have not shown that, other than to keep people guessing on whether or not Goku and Vegeta were going to fuse. And then there's Kibito Kai. He was still fused in Super, yet Daima completely ignores that. What happened? Did they fuse again off screen? If so, what will be the point of that? This just seems like an unnecessary retcon. Another question mark is Super Saiyan 4. Daima brought it back, but how will the series handle the transformation moving forward? Will it just be forgotten again like in Super? Also, apparently Goku was already working on the form prior to Neva unlocking it for him. If that were the case, then prior to Super in the timeline, we should see more showings of that form and get a proper explanation as to why Goku doesn't use the form. And finally, and probably the biggest downside, Daima's ending. While the journey was great, the finale left me and many fans wanting more. Compared to the grandeur and excitement built throughout the series, the final battle felt anticlimactic. A show this well crafted deserves a stronger, more impactful conclusion, and instead, it just sort of ended. Again, it being a detriment to only having 20 episodes to work with. Even an extra 5 episodes could have really helped out with fleshing out some things. Despite some of its flaws, Dragon Ball Daima is still a massive improvement over Dragon Ball Super in almost every way. It respects its characters, delivers breathtaking fights, and finally gives transformations the weight they deserve. If Dragon Ball Super felt like a rushed sequel, Daima feels like a love letter to everything that made Dragon Ball great. So do you agree? Is Daima the superior series, or do you still prefer Super? I'd love to get y'all's thoughts, so let me know in the comment section below. And if you want to see more videos like this, click the card you see here, which will take you to my video on why Dragon Ball Super is worse than you remember, but still better than the majority of One Piece. I'm the Curly Haired Hokge, and I hope you all have an amazing and blessed day. Peace.